G'day, legends. Wishing you all a beautiful, peaceful, healing days every day. Listen to what I found. This is about all the AI bullshit they're going to bring to us in the future. Just a bit of a heads up, mates.
I think that most of society has no idea what has already happened.
Oh, this is Mike Adams, by the way, from Brighteon.com.
And how civilization is about to dramatically change over the next couple of years. You want to give us kind of an overview of what you see happening?
Happily, Mike, and I also want to acknowledge that you have been a rare voice in this space, calling out technological trends that are effectively technocracy in disguise, the slow creep of the convergence of our governmental structures with effectively appearances of private technology, consumer-grade technology, that have come together now and coalesced in a system that is doing what old intelligence agencies used to have to do a lot of cloak and dagger to do.
Right.
Now we're all carrying around these devices that are spying on us.
Yeah.
And have normalized
and
them.
feeding them all of our information voluntarily through our search queries and browsing histories and everything else.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, when you even talk to younger people who weren't even born when this was starting, they all know this and they consider this just a given. So they're basically born into a culture that has absolutely normalized a kind of technocratic view of things, surveillance, and then also its flip side that people don't often refer to. It's a different term, a French term. It's surveillance, which is the surveillance of one another. So our technologies are also simultaneously listening to one another. Right now, we're in an age where we can start to flip the script, Mike. That's why I'm here. That's why I connect with individuals such as yourself and start to change the force for greater independence. It's interesting. This is a great conversation to be having with you.
Well, let's talk about the realm of AI and large language models, because this is where I think there's a really critical pivot point for human civilization and human freedom. There's on one hand the open source movement, which is very strong in large language models. And of course, I'm working on a project in that space. Maybe we can talk about that. But then there's the centralized OpenAI, which is not open. It's closed AI, but it's called OpenAI. And there's the giants, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta, and what have you. And they want to control the AI space. They want a monopoly on it. They don't want people to have open source options. But I think they're going to lose. I think that the democratization or decentralization of AI technology is already unstoppable. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that they're concerned that if they do not continue to capture the space as they have for the last 2.5 to 3 decades, depending on when you think the internet officially started. But in the mid-90s, we had a move to the democratization of technology. Those of us who are coming up in that space had a very kind of cyberpunk view of the future. Had we been able to get a snapshot of 2024 way back in the mid-90s, we would be terrified.
Oh, yeah.
Things are way, way more controlled than we know. Now, at the same time, we have the illusion of consumer freedom, right? Look at all those colors I can choose from. Look at all these incredible tools I have. Yes, there's an app for everything, but at the back end, and that's really how the capture has happened, Mike, is we have transposed consumer freedom for our governmental freedoms, for our liberties, for our basic everyday sovereignty. And I think that's how you get the average person, is you get them dumbed down, you get them influenced by, again, another thing you have fought battles on and do every day, which is inappropriate food supply that has toxified us, made us sick, made us weak, and made the average person not necessarily capable of doing as independent a body of thinking as they need to know where they're at in the world.
Yeah, the processed food and the pesticides affect the brain.
Right. I think I literally read that the average American consumes 70% of their calories from ultra-processed, hyper-palatable foods.
Wow.
So that is not a good picture. You and I know what the implications of just that statistic alone are. So then on the other end, you have tools that just basically, like in the film WALL-E, distract us, amuse us. I think Neil Postman wrote a great book in the early 80s called Amusing Ourselves to Death. He saw this coming too. He was a student of Marshall McLuhan.
You know, 123 million Americans watched the Super Bowl recently. I didn't even know the Super Bowl was happening until that day when I saw it. Why is everybody talking about the Super Bowl? That's not on my radar at all. And while that was happening, you know, nefarious things were happening in the Senate, right?
Yep.
Because everybody's distracted. But it seems like distraction is one of the key weapons that's used against humanity. Like, focus on this while we steal your money, your rights, your
Right.
future, your freedoms over here, right?
Right. And I'm here today, Mike, to talk about the prosumer side of it, that word that actually came out also in the 90s, the producer consumer hybrid, the ability for us to use these tools, to use our abilities. We do have degrees of freedom right now. It's arguable that AI tools will take away the last vestiges of that. There is a degree to which everybody needs to sign up for this. So they need people to participate on a deeper level. It's a bit of a reach right now, but you know, those of us who are in the futurist space are already seeing the next phase of this after AI, which would be the Neuralink type projects. Of course, Elon is doing a lot of things in a lot of spaces, and he's setting the tone. There's going to be 100 startups underneath Neuralink that come in and basically absolutely modernize, normalize, make accessible everyday uses of brain implants.
Oh,
so again, right, once AI is driving a lot of things, and then people feel obligated to do some kind of invasive technology, you know, prosthesis.
Yeah.
Then we have really where else is left? Where else is left, Mike?
Well, but see, I'm extremely concerned about the Neuralink project for a number of reasons. Not only did they do, I think, inhumane testing on animals. That's
Yes,
one thing that
absolutely.
I'm concerned about. But secondly, we've already seen how much mobile phones have altered the brains of especially children and youth.
Yes.
So young people now grow up with this very short attention span, which equates to an inability to engage in long-term decision-making with an understanding of the ramifications of the effects of their
Yeah.
actions. That's just from mobile phones, which you can put down. Imagine when it's an implant in your brain or it's an overlay contact lens. I mean,
Yes.
think about the Apple, what's it called, the Vision Pro?
Apple Vision Pro.
Think about the Apple Vision Pro embedded in your eyes.
Right.
Like all the time, it's a virtual environment. What's that gonna do? Especially kids and teens, but also everybody else. I mean, we're already a society that's disconnected from reality in so many ways. It's gonna get a lot worse.
Mike, there's a branch of neuroscience called neurosequential development. All of that is neuroscientists saying, well, this is how things used to be. This is how humans used to organically develop. There were stages of life nature has built in. You see it throughout the animal kingdom, and humans have it too. Especially those first 14 to 21 years, we need to unfold the way we were designed. At every step, in many cases in the first few months of life, if not in gestation or preconception, that's being altered. We have very few, at least in America or the North American continent, organic humans left, in the sense of letting people just develop in nature and with nature. Now, the technological interventions that you and I are talking about today, we're looking at a not doubling down, maybe a tripling down of what we've seen the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
So in some senses, they've studied how far they can push this. Now that's going to exponentially grow and accelerate. We've seen in Black Mirror, which lots of people watched and aghast.
I feel like we're living Black Mirror.
We're
now.
watching it wash ashore every day, a little
Yeah.
more of Black Mirror, right? So there was a great episode about contact lenses that are recording and filming and overlaying
Yep.
every day, surveilling everybody 24/7, and what kind of society that would be. But they also know that that can't be done overnight. That has to be very gradual.
But let's
Crikey, crikey, what do you think of this? Man, it's gonna be interesting the next few years, mate. Big time. I think I'll continue on. Let's roll. Big love, mates. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't let no one get in your head by the sounds of this.
Let's talk about the upside also then of augmented reality technologies. As you know, every tech can be used for, to enslave people or to set people free. I'm going to define that as the two polar ends of the spectrum. But augmented reality, if used appropriately, could, for example, allow you to have, here's Benjamin Franklin in the room about American history.
Right.
Like characters, and this obviously this just scratched the surface, but characters that are added to your reality space and that interact with you verbally.
Yes.
I could see that, even for training. I mean, think about law enforcement training. Think
Right.
about debate training. I mean, just teachers all throughout your life. That would be an amazing use of that tech.
Right,
But,
Mike.
yeah,
Open
go ahead.
education.
Right.
We've been talking about this for quite some time. The question is these. So we'll get a little bit into this today. I hope AI agents need to be drawing from a well that is unpolluted, that's not controlled and pre-constrained and pre-filtered and pre-edited.
Too late for that.
So if there's a customized tutor that is giving my child the education they need, question to question, following their curiosity trail down the trail with them.
That's right.
But that kid doesn't know that 50% of the knowledge that they could have access to has already been redacted.
Right.
Right. So this is a question. I remember having this conversation with you several years ago on how unfree Wikipedia was becoming with every passing year. In its first 5 years, it was, by today's standards, anarchic. It was anybody posting whatever they wanted with very little ombudsmanship. Now you can go.
It's a CIA mouthpiece.
You Google and look up inside Wikipedia the definition of alternative medicine. It's defined as that medicine which has not been proven to be true. It's effectively a bum definition of what alternative medicine should be in a definitive sense.
Right, right. No, I think our audience knows Wikipedia has been totally controlled by nefarious forces that are allied against human freedom and against human knowledge. And this is also critical. By the way, I want to mention, if people are hearing huffing and puffing in the background, that is my security dog. We ran him hard, played with him, and he's calming down. But if you hear a little bit of that, that's him, not me.
He's adorable.
Yeah, he's hanging out here. He's having a great time. But Google started out as, the goal was to index the world's knowledge. And now, I've argued for a couple of years now, that the job of Google is to the world's knowledge. It is to dissociate knowledge, or dissociate humans from knowledge.
Right.
It's an anti-knowledge search engine, and I happen to believe, and this is why I'm working on a large language model project, I think that LLMs are now the new frontier of free speech that can make Google obsolete, and that's why I'm working on this project.
Exactly right, Mike. And your audience and people who are passionate about whether or not there's still time, space, and how to do it, right? We can all be armchair critics, or we can get up out of our seats and build the tools that we need for that future.
Learn to code.
And I know you and I in our conversations, learn to code or find an app in this ecosystem that we're building. What I do at Holospace, it's an open incubator system and model. We have resources, tools. It's all open source.
Yeah, tell us about Holospace, because you're the one who created that, right?
Yes, I am the founder, and my concern after decades of watching sort of this technology creep, technological overwhelm. You look at the Center for Humane Technology and that Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. They accurately describe what was going on. I've been in and around what the Center for Humane Technology does, but they're still just a policy group pushing out papers, analyzing it. They play a vital role, but they're not inventing the new tools. That is, the metaphor I go with, Mike, is who is going to create the tool that once is out of the genie bottle can't be put back in? I'll give you one quick point that we need to have here. Now we have, you and I, access to virtually free LLMs off the shelf that can read all of Wikipedia in dozens of languages in about 5 minutes or less, and then churn out. So there's still this kind of, let's call it a cultural arms race. There's this open space, and before that is fully locked down, and we're unable to make these decisions before it's fully Orwellian. We need to get out the tools, the platforms, the systems to be able to have enough of an open culture that it can't be fully captured.
Well, and I would say that, with huggingface.co out there, which is a really nice repository of LLMs, and we're going to be contributing to Hugging Face. And there's one man in particular, Eric Hartford, who has created the uncensored dolphin varieties of many of the LLMs out there, like Llama 2 and Vicuna and Mistral and so on. And clearly he's opposed to censorship. He does fine-tuning training of the LLMs that take away the guardrails and labels them uncensored. Which I think is the appropriate thing to do, because if I'm asking an LLM, how do I break into a car? Assume that I'm going to carry out a crime. I might need to break into my own car, or I might be writing a fictional script about breaking into a car. And I might need some assistance with that, right? So there is a very strong open source movement that we're contributing to. We're going to be releasing our first open source model at the end of March, and we're calling it Neo at the moment, just with the matrix and all that. But we're training it. Our initial data set and the data pipeline is the hardest part of this, by the way. But our initial data set is all herbs, nutrition, permaculture, off-grid living,
Fantastic.
and phytochemicals. I mean, this, I have no doubt this is going to be the world's best open source model with nutritional and food knowledge of anything out there. And I'm thrilled to be able to push that into the open space and let other people train on it.
We can't wait to see it, and I want to help you bring that into existence. And I know that your community participating in the usage of it is what's going to continue its evolution and growth.
That's
Because
right.
there's endless amounts of knowledge it can be trained on. We want it to be so robust, the average person recognizes it as the definitive source for this.
Well, I just put out the call for people to contribute, and you wouldn't believe. I mean, I've got signed permission from a lot of well-known people to use their entire body of knowledge
Right.
for training. Everybody wants to contribute to this project, like Dr. Judy Mikovits, for example.
Right.
She's contributing, and many others are contributing. And what maybe the end users here don't know, but you'll be able to run it locally. So no internet connection is necessary to run this. You can run it on a Mac, on Windows, or Linux.
So decentralization and peer-to-peer architectures are absolutely fundamental to this.
This is purely decentralized offline tech.
And so, Mike, I want to make this point because it's relevant to the time we're in right now. I made the journey into Switzerland, up the Swiss Alps, and attended World Economic Forum, which, for those who wonder whether or not World Economic Forum is an elitist enclave completely closed off to the world, it's not. All you need is one little ticket into Switzerland and then a train ticket 2 hours up the mountain, and you're there. It's a public ski town. Anyone can walk those streets like I did. It was not hard to access. Once you're there, there's lots of opportunities to participate in tons of open events. A group called Undavos is there to disrupt the agenda that has been put forward there. And the reason I'm pivoting to this point is because the infrastructure you're talking about, a radically different architecture based on decentralization architecture and peer-to-peer and many other components that will allow systems such as the one you're going to be propagating, those captures that we're talking about first started at the infrastructural level. We call that big data. Big tech can't operate without big data feeding itself back, how the network operations are constantly running, keeping that thing humming. Wikipedia alone probably, we're going to continue with that example, issues, I'm going to argue something like a couple 100 million page views per second. And you have a background in tech and computer science, Mike. You know how hard that is for those data centers just to keep that running 24/7, 365 globally.
Right.
So they can.
I think we might roll this for half an hour, Ray. We'll go for another 13 minutes. Let's roll. It's eye-opening. Crikey.
Pipelines right now, the infrastructures, and that's how they're able to manipulate, massage the cultural and informational agendas. I mean, there's a reason why it's called InfoWars. Yeah.
You're exactly correct. But let me add that because of the advances in microprocessors,
Right.
offloading from the data centers to the end user's local hardware in order to execute things like large language models, that is happening now, and that lends itself to decentralization. It's kind of like before the Revolutionary War in America, you know, the invention of the rifle was that people, everyday people, could make a rifle.
Right.
And it changed history.
Right.
Because now everybody had a tool of freedom in that case. Well, today, with the tools that are becoming available, I mean, we're just on the verge of this, just the cutting edge, but everybody will be able to, very soon, I think within the next year, everybody will be able to take an off-the-shelf open source LLM, expose it to their own materials, whatever they want that to be, could be a bunch of their own books or transcripts or whatever, and then generate their own local language model that they execute locally, and that takes away power from the big data centralized platforms that no longer assert control over people. So this is a revolution happening.
Right, Mike, I want to fully agree with you, yes and style, but I want to ever so slightly disagree, only to provoke your audience and you into the urgent call for action. Because as I was driving over here, the news came through that OpenAI has announced that its fundamental pivot, you know, Sam Altman was in and out as CEO, CEO again, and they had to figure out a new business model. Again, this is an organization that started with Elon Musk promoting the idea that AI is going to be a runaway technology that needed to be brought under control and needed to be opened up. But now OpenAI, with Microsoft investing over $20 billion, is anything but open.
Right.
And so their pivot, Mike, is to agents. So I want to give your audience the heads up. That's a word you're going to start hearing a lot in the coming years. So it's going to be much more applied, specific You're going to have an agent for your banking, an agent for your email, an agent for when you travel. And that's cool as a utility. But Mike,
But we need to define what these agents are.
yeah, so an agent is an automated workflow. It's just, they're going to have a task-specific automation. And so it's kind of like little micro AIs. And in the 90s, everybody had to have a .com and an email client. Now in the 2020s and into the 2030s, everyone's going to have and generate new business models around an agent for every area of life.
And importantly, in order for these agents to function, and Amazon already has a series of agents labeled Q, I believe, you have to give these agents access to everything.
Right.
Your email, your passwords, your network, your hard drive, everything.
Right.
So you have to give up all privacy.
Yes, you do. Apple put out also in the advent of this Apple Vision Pro release a couple of weeks ago, a big paper today, a white paper on its privacy parameters and schematics. And I had team members look at it laughing at how they're promoting the idea that it's all about privacy when in fact it's far from it. And it has all kinds of backdoors as well that make it vulnerable to all kinds of cyber attacks. But the pushback here conceptually, Mike, is simple. OpenAI and these systems right now have a huge upper hand, and it's going to take creatives and engineers and liberty-oriented individuals such as those in your audience to get out there and create these tools and platforms at any area of life, whether it's just in your own community, whether it's in your church. Create the tools that will allow you guys to maintain the sovereignty within your own infosphere. Right now, your information spheres are controlled by a bunch of people tied to Silicon Valley or in Silicon Valley. And in a moment, I'm going to share a story about here in Austin, Texas, somebody tied to Google that I encountered. And it's just unbelievable to me, Mike, the amount of arrogance. It is arrogance on every level you might imagine.
Oh, yeah.
They really are thinking they are the people driving forward the future and that therefore they have permission to do whatever they want, however they want, by any means necessary.
Yeah, talk about that, because I've noticed that as well.
Yeah.
And because there's no pushback against them, not even by government, not even by the Supreme Court enforcing the First Amendment yet. There is no such decision. So Google thinks they can do anything they want.
Right, and some folks here know that 23andMe was founded by two women, and the woman who's retained the CEO status and has stayed on was basically in a number of open, direct challenges and confrontations regarding the privacy around 23andMe, an online platform for having genomics testing done on yourself. If you do that, you're given a big end user license agreement promising that you have all your data protected, but it's quite known now that that's just not the case.
Well, plus there was a big hack of 23andMe.
Not to mention the hack.
Yeah.
And then they just redefine the ways in which they're allowed to sell off your personal biological data and medicalize it as they please. So that brave new world, Mike, is going to converge with several others. And there have been brilliant futurists that have been seeing this coming for half a century or more. At the same time, we had Buckminster Fuller reminding us around the same time, I think it was in the 1950s, he said, don't go competing against the existing paradigm. You're going to cancel your energy out. Simply render it obsolete through new acts of creation. And that's my call to you, to everyone we work with, and to anyone in your audience. Reach out to us, reach out to me. Finding your sphere and your empowerment is in the fact that you're able to create a tool right now that will withstand the test of time and participate in this new ecosystem. You see, they have social media captured, they have all the informational warfare control, and they don't think that anyone's going to raise a hand to object to them. Even when there is noise and disagreement, they've already outgamed that system.
But I have a lot of faith and hope in the understanding that the establishment is so dissociated from reality that it makes truth-based interaction with technology far more compelling.
Yes.
So in other words, like when I release my LLM, people are going to share it like crazy because it's the only LLM that will answer them honestly about what herbs can be used to prevent cancer, for example.
Right.
Because OpenAI won't allow that kind of answer.
No.
Because it's all controlled by Big Pharma.
Right.
So the models like mine and others will be so compelling, and that's just another example of how these tools can empower people. Now, Can people contact you and work with Holospace to launch new ventures?
Yes.
Or how does that work?
Yeah, we have all.
Alright. Yeah, mate, that was Mike Adams from Brightian.com. I think I'll knock it on the head there. Just a bit of a heads up of what we're something to, look forward to. Crikey, mate, do not comply. Do not comply. Big love, mates. Wishing you well.